A tree whose roots do not reach into hell cannot have its branches rise to heaven. What is this statement trying to tell us? Let's think about a good person. How do we determine that this person is good? We look at their behavior, right? Because that's all we can do. We observe the outside. We cannot know exactly what they think or what their inner mental world is like. Most likely, the person we consider good also has disgusting thoughts they would be ashamed to confess. They have a dark side, but at the end of the day, they have controlled it and perhaps even channeled it towards something better. Their roots may stretch into hell, but they recognize the potential for evil within themselves and have used the energy from that potential to rise higher, extending their branches toward heaven. A complete human being is someone who is aware of the potential for evil inside them. Someone who recognizes their shadow, takes it seriously, but does not succumb to it. Yet we should not see the shadow only as the bad side of good people. The shadow is simply the general term for the parts of ourselves we suppress, the parts we shove under the rug. Every suppressed feeling does not disappear. On the contrary, it carries the potential to return even stronger. That's why confronting the shadow is not a threat but an invitation to see ourselves more fully. A good person's shadow may contain perverse thoughts, just as a bad person's shadow may contain conscience and humanity. The shadow is not present in our conscious mind, but is a potential hidden in our unconscious. Stories love to use the concept of the shadow. In Fight Club, for example, the main character confronts his shadow the moment he comes face to face with Tyler Durden, and this story especially conveys a shadow that is specific to men through masculinity. But what about women? Don't they have shadows too? Black Swan is a film that portrays a woman's shadow. The film tells the story of a ballerina. Even though she is a principal dancer, the success of her performance depends on the coordination of many people behind the scenes: the director, assistant dancers, musicians. Just like employees in a successful company, or even the software that company uses, must work in harmony. Nina, a talented and ambitious ballerina, is performing in shows at a prestigious dance school in New York. The school's charismatic and predatory director, Thomas, tells the students that this season they will stage Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. We should briefly mention Swan Lake. Alongside Tchaikovsky's passionate music, the ballet tells the story of a tragic love. A malevolent sorcerer transforms a beautiful girl, Odette, into a white swan. Odette can only return to human form at night, while during the day she remains a swan. The sorcerer explains that only true love can break the dark spell upon Odette. There is also a prince character. One night while walking around the lake, the prince sees Odette and falls in love with her. But darkness approaches, and Odette transforms back into a swan. The prince promises to reunite with Odette. A ball is being held at the palace for the prince. The sorcerer brings his daughter, Odile, also known as the Black Swan, to the ball, disguised as Odette. As soon as the prince sees the sorcerer's daughter, he believes she is the girl he fell in love with by the lake and declares his love to Odile. This news reaches Odette's ears and she is devastated. The prince realizes his mistake and immediately runs to Odette to apologize. At that moment, the sorcerer intervenes and says to the prince, "You promised to marry my daughter. You cannot break your word." For Odette, this is the last straw. She believes she will never be with the prince and attempts to kill herself. The prince, convinced he cannot live without her, also takes his own life. However, at that moment, true love intervenes. Their sacrifice confirms their love for each other, breaking the spell. While Swan Lake has different traditional endings, one of the most popular is this happy ending. Thomas, however, adds his own interpretation to the story, making it darker and more realistic. In his version, Odette and Odile are actually twin sisters. Odile seduces the prince not by impersonating Odette, but by being herself and using desire to manipulate him. The ending is no longer happy. As soon as Odette discovers that the prince has been seduced by Odile, she immediately kills herself, and the story concludes with Odette's tragic and solitary death. For this dark ballet production, a swan queen must be chosen. This dancer will portray both the black and white swans. This is an extremely difficult task. Playing the White Swan requires superior technique and training, which Nina already possesses. The Black Swan, however, is instinctual and intuitive. When performing as the Black Swan, one must think little and surrender control. White Swan demands elegance. Black Swan demands wildness. Nina unexpectedly learns that she has been chosen as the Swan Queen. She handles the White Swan sections masterfully but cannot manage the Black Swan sections. She cannot enter the flow or manifest her shadow. At that moment, a new ballerina appears, Lily. In many ways, Lily is Nina's complete opposite. While Nina is socially withdrawn and has few friends, Lily loves socializing, having fun, and nightlife. Nina is cold, tense, and constantly consumed by her thoughts, whereas Lily is relaxed, confident, and unconcerned with what others think. But the most important difference between them is this. While Nina excels in the White Swan sections, Lily is skilled at the Black Swan. Even though Nina has been chosen as the Swan Queen, she feels uneasy about Lily's presence. Lily represents a threat who could potentially take her role. Nina is determined not to let Lily usurp the role of the queen and knows that to perform as the Black Swan, she must confront her own dark side. Before we move into the shadow aspect, let's discuss the psychology that the story conveys through these two characters. Male clients who came to Freud reported an interesting phenomenon in themselves. They said they felt little sexual desire for their wives but experienced intense desire for sex workers. This psychological phenomenon became known in the literature as the Madonna whore complex. It's interesting what some men expect from women. They want women to be obedient, moral, and conservative. But when a woman meets these expectations, they criticize her for not being feminine enough. These men try to make a woman into a white swan, but then demand to know why she never becomes a black swan. In Swan Lake, the prince in the film shares this mindset. He falls in love with the white swan but is seduced by the black swan. Desire triumphs over love, and for Thomas, the first requirement to perform the black swan scenes and become a complete swan queen is to be seductive. This is precisely why Lily is such a significant threat to Nina. Lily is the embodiment of the black swan. She is flirtatious in everything she does, even with her gaze. She engages in casual sexual encounters, loves having fun, and indulges in activities considered morally wrong or improper by society. Her problem is that she is too consumed by the black swan side. She too is not complete. Because she does not take life seriously, her technique and discipline as a ballerina are lacking, and she struggles with the white swan sections. Nina, on the other hand, is the other side of the same coin. She becomes overly absorbed in the white swan. Despite being in her mid-20s, she still gives off a childlike impression. Her room is still like that of a child. Her mother dresses her, trims her nails. Nina is her mother's good girl. She has been raised in a glass case. She has been late in meeting her shadow, and one of the reasons for this delay is her mother's narcissistic compulsion. Even the cake scene is enough to show that there are some issues with Nina's mother, Erica. After Nina tells her mother over the phone that she has been chosen as the Swan Queen, Erica has a large cake made for her daughter. But Nina's throat is tight with stress and excitement, and she politely tells her mother that she cannot eat the cake. And look at her mother's reaction. The mother apologizes, or at least appears to, but in a way that mimics feeding a child. The infamous line is delivered. This cake scene is, in itself, a demonstration of how a narcissistic mother operates. Because for a narcissistic parent, the child is an extension of themselves, not an independent individual. Even the child's choices, feelings, or appetite are perceived as attacks on the parent's existence. The cake ceases to be a gesture of love and becomes a tool of control. Her daughter refuses to eat the cake, yet Erica still takes pride in this matter. You will eat it, she thinks, implying that by threatening to throw the cake away, she wants to hear her daughter apologize. At this point, the cake is no longer just a sweet food. It becomes a symbol of a love that chokes and a binding attachment that leaves no room to breathe. Nina struggles not because she cannot eat the cake, but because she cannot digest her mother's version of love. After all, Erica put effort into making this cake, and when a narcissist invests effort into something, they expect their ego to be stroked to the fullest. Erica displays her controlling side in many ways. She enters her daughter's room without respecting personal space, does not want her daughter to meet new people, and is constantly critical of her. For Erica, everything must always revolve around herself. Looking into her past, the pieces start to fall into place. Like her daughter, she danced ballet in her youth on the island, but she had to give up a promising career when she became pregnant. In the film, we never see a father figure. It is likely that Erica had a relationship with someone who did not take things seriously or could not maintain a relationship, and when she became pregnant, she chose not to terminate the pregnancy. Consider how she imposes judgments on her daughter with this. Your birth was not part of my plan. You came into the world because of my mistakes. Then you must serve a purpose for me. Your success is also my success. Everything is always about me. I gave up my career for you, so you must achieve what I could not. Erica carries these thoughts subtly, and every moment when her daughter seems to care or take initiative, narcissistic motivation is at play. Even constantly painting her daughter's portraits is disturbing, because a narcissistic mother sees her child as an extension of herself. For Nina, this represents a tragic example. She fears becoming like her mother as she ages. In the dancer's dressing room, the conversation turns to a ballerina named Bet. Bet is a retired former principal dancer of the company, likely around 35 years old. While the other girls mock Bet's age, Nina immediately adopts a protective stance, noting that there are ballerinas who continue performing until they are 50, emphasizing that Bet is still alive. Nina fears aging, or more precisely, fears becoming like her mother. If she fails to realize her potential as a ballerina, she does not want to become someone like her mother, who harbors unfulfilled ambitions and projects them onto her child. This explains Nina's intense drive. There is a frightening maternal figure at play. She fears both becoming her mother and confronting her mother's presence directly. Her mother exerts control over Nina's body. Nina cannot grow her nails or scratch her back. By standing up to her mother, Nina takes the first step in reclaiming control over her body. She embraces the mindset, I will wear what I want, drink alcohol, and be intimate with whom I choose. Similarly, she claims authority over her room, just as she does over her body. By defying her mother, she takes the initial step toward encountering her shadow. The next challenge is even greater, confronting that shadow. The shadow is our instinct, our intuition, our creativity. Lily, when she dances, embraces her shadow. She does not care what others think, losing herself in the flow. The shadow demands transformation. Change is necessary, and transformations are painful. One must leave behind the comfort zone built over years. Especially if you have suppressed your shadow for a long time, its emergence will be intense and uncontrollable. Nina's recurring wound shows that her shadow is now begging, and even overflowing, to emerge. The wound never fully heals. Through it, her shadow tells her, I am here, and you cannot escape me. Everyone has a shadow. The less it is integrated into conscious life, the darker and more intense it becomes. Confronting our dark side is like meeting a new person. We encounter potentials within ourselves that we have never discovered before. Nina has remained so alien to her own shadow that when it emerges, she feels as if she is encountering another person. She experiences a split in her personality, triggering psychotic episodes. When partying, she loses herself. The shadow is taking controlled possession of her. Worst of all, she develops paranoia toward Lily. Every movement Lily makes catches Nina's attention. Nina falls into the delusion that Lily is trying to sabotage her and take the role of the queen for herself. Yet, Lily is not the jealous person Nina believes her to be. Here, Nina is projecting her shadow. But what exactly is shadow projection? At first, we humans struggle to acknowledge that we have a shadow, to admit it to ourselves, and often we choose to project our shadow onto someone else. For example, imagine that you struggle to express your sexuality, and this frustrates you. Then you encounter someone who expresses theirs freely, and you project your shadow onto that person. You may even label them as immoral. You think they are inferior to you, that they are envious of you, but in reality, you are the one who is envious. We tend to admire those who embrace their shadow. In fact, we may even fall in love with such people. Nina sees everything about her own shadow in Lily. In one scene, Lily enters the room while Nina is alone. As Nina looks at the shadowed version of Lily, she is actually seeing herself. Once the shadow is revealed, Lily's face becomes visible. This is precisely what shadow projection is. Throughout the film, mirror figures appear repeatedly. Everyone feels a twinge of shame when looking at their mother. Being judged through our own eyes is an unsettling process. We hesitate to look at our mother but cannot resist entirely because, in the end, every person wants to face their own truth, and those who force us to confront our truth capture our attention. Nina sees aspects of herself in Lily. The issue is not really Lily but Nina herself. If our shadow never becomes active, we cannot reach our potential. But if the shadow remains active constantly, it sabotages both ourselves and those around us. Like Bette, this woman, who was once among the best ballerinas a few years ago, had to retire due to age. Learning that she could no longer be the Swan Queen, she sank into depression and attempted to take her own life. Nina shares the same fate with Bette. She has allowed herself to be overtaken by her shadow. When Nina learns that Lily will play the role of the girl who cannot assert her rights, she threatens Toma with self-harm. Nina has been so focused on becoming the Black Swan that when she goes on stage, she fails to perform the part she excels at, the White Swan, and falls. Despite this disaster, Nina does not give up. She returns to her room to prepare for the Black Swan part, only to find Lily there. When Lily says, "I will perform the Black Swan for you," Nina kills her. Her shadow has been fully activated. Even though the White Swan part fails, everything is ready for the Black Swan. Nina delivers a phenomenal Black Swan performance, but the show is not yet over. She must perform the final scene, where the White Swan learns the painful truth and takes her own life. When Nina enters her room to become the White Swan, someone knocks on the door. It is Lily, there to congratulate her. In that moment, Nina realizes the truth. She was not fighting Lily in that room. She was fighting herself and harming herself. Nina goes on stage to perform the White Swan in a wounded state, and by the end of the performance, she begins to lose blood. She has succeeded as the Black Swan but has lived the fate of the White Swan. Toma had said something along the lines of, "The hard part is done once you become the Dark Twin." That statement was wrong, or rather, incomplete. The real challenge is transforming back into the White Twin after becoming the Dark Twin. Achieving that balance is the hardest part of engaging with the shadow. Being only the White Swan is easy. Being only the Black Swan is also easy. But to become the true Swan Queen, as in the film, is to master the balance of black and white, consciousness and subconscious, ego and shadow. You might ask, why is the shadow so important? Why should someone who does not believe in their own potential confront their shadow? Why swim in the dark waters? Because until we face our shadow, others can crush us, victimize us, and manipulate us more easily. Nina spent a large portion of her life controlled by her mother, exploited by Toma, and defenseless against malevolent forces, becoming a tool for them. Life sometimes demands that we become the Black Swan. In those moments, we must not think about what others will say or ask, "Am I making a mistake?" Our instincts, intuition, and creativity will guide us. Black Swan is indeed an excellent work for portraying this reality. In the Black Swan sequence, the ballerina is expected to perform a series of rapid turns. The moment she doubts herself, "Am I doing this correctly? What will people think of me?" her concentration breaks and she fails. She must be confident, carefree, self-assured, and daring. The ending of the film leaves some viewers questioning what happened because it is unclear whether Nina actually dies. Personally, I believe Nina does die. Such a mortal ending suits the film's somber tone and Toma's realistic interpretation of Swan Lake. However, at the end of the film, the screen does not go dark, it turns white. So what should we make of this whitening ending? Normally, at the end of films, the screen goes black. A black screen signifies resolution, a conclusion, but white represents a new beginning. Until you transform your subconscious into consciousness, your subconscious governs your life, and you call that fate, Jung had said. Nina was trapped in a cycle of fate. She had not confronted the shadow within her subconscious, and precisely because of this, her subconscious had condemned her to a very specific destiny. She had been long bound to her mother with few friends, unable to express her creative and instinctual side, living an incomplete life. But by confronting her shadow, albeit in a toxic and painful way, she underwent a process of integration. She came closer to her own truth. She freed herself from being trapped forever as a white swan. The spell was broken. So what about you? Do you have the courage to face your own shadow? Remember, sometimes acknowledging our darkest aspects brings forth our brightest light.